In this video, we're going to talk about electoral districts. Anytime we're discussing elections, there are four important elements to consider: the district, the ballot, the franchise, and the formula. In this video, we're going to look at the district. When we talk about electoral districts, we are referring to the area or the region that is being contested. Typically, in majoritarian systems, the country or the province or the region will be further subdivided into smaller units, and people will be elected to represent those units. We call those electoral districts. When we're talking about them and comparing them across systems, there's a few different things we need to look at: district magnitude and district delineation. When we're talking about the district magnitude, we're referring to the number of people that will be elected from that region to enter into the legislature and represent the population, the idea of representative governance. In most majoritarian systems, that is one person. Single-member districts, they elect one person to represent them in the legislature. It's also possible to have more than one. We call those multi-member districts, where there will be several people going to the legislature to represent a certain region. An example of a single-member district system would be Canada. In Canada, the country is divided up into electoral districts. Each of them will elect one person, and that person will represent their riding or their constituency in the national parliament. That's a district magnitude of one. One person from each riding going to parliament. It is also possible to have a district magnitude of two, where there's two members that come from each district. Chile has experimented with this in some levels of government. Now, how this would work is there are two seats to be awarded for that riding. It can be contested by different candidates or parties, and then two of them would win the right to represent the district. And it would depend on the electoral formula, how those are allocated. The last type is multi-member districts, where you have an electoral district and multiple members will be representing that region in the elected legislature. And typically, these are common in proportional systems rather than majoritarian systems. And in this case, when you have a number of seats being contested, the political parties will publish a party list. And so in this case, we've got 4 seats in our multi-member district. Each of the parties will have a list of candidates that would potentially fill those seats if their party wins. So you think about how many seats you are awarded, and then you go down the list, and that number of members would represent. So here's how that might look. Let's say we have an election. The blue party wins 50% of the vote, and the red and orange party are hovering around 25% respectively. So in this case, the blue party would win half of those seats. They would win 2 seats out of the 4. And to find who represents, they would just go down the list, the top 2 names on the list. Similarly, we would get 1 seat from the red party, 1 seat from the orange party. And they would be the ones that represent this multi-member district in the legislature. Another concern is how the borders get there. It's one thing to talk about electoral districts, but where do they come from? There's a couple different practices. One is to have them drawn by elected politicians, and that can be problematic for a number of reasons. Another way is to have independent boundary commissions draw these districts, and that is the most common. Most countries in representative democracies typically have some kind of independent boundary commission to draw the electoral districts. There will often be somewhere between 3 and 7 members on the commission. They are typically non-political, or at least non-partisan people. You need people with expertise in not just election law and administration, but also geography and statistics. There will be a lot of different factors that they weight depending on the country. Typically, it will be population. They would want equal numbers of population. They would want to ensure local communities of interest are represented. There's a lot of different factors that are weighed and balanced when they try and draw effective electoral borders. Now, we alluded to the fact that not all systems use an independent commission. The United States is pretty much an outlier here in that they use elected politicians at the state level to draw their district boundaries. And sometimes those district lines are drawn in a manner that can favor one party or one candidate. And the name given to that is gerrymandering, the intentional drawing of boundaries to give your party or a candidate a distinct electoral advantage. The result is it ends up with some very strange looking district shapes. And this is Illinois' 4th Congressional District. It almost looks like 2 separate districts. They're almost, incontiguous with the exception of that one little patch that joins them. And it makes you wonder how this makes any sense. Now, in this particular case, there were different concerns about trying to keep communities of interest in the same region, in the same district. But there are other factors that come into play, and that's whether they are trying to protect a politician and allow them to get reelected, or whether they're trying to freeze out an opposition party. Typically, that's part of the calculation. Here's how that looks. Let's say we've got a region that has a population split that's about 60% supporters of the blue party, 40% supporters of the red party. Now, if we needed to draw 5 districts, there's a number of different ways we could do that. We could just simply draw straight lines across and that's it. Just sort of equal numbers of people in each district, straight as possible lines. However, that would give us 5 districts, and the blue party would win each one of those districts. They would have a numerical advantage in every district, and that's not very representative. Conversely, we could use partisan intent to try and diminish the success of the blue party. And we might do that by packing all of the blue supporters into 2 large districts, and then drawing the districts selectively so that the red party might have an advantage in the other ones. And so by doing this, by isolating as many voters as possible from the blue supporters into 2 areas in this case, we would end up with 3 red districts and 2 blue ones, even though blue in this electoral area has a higher population. And so this is how gerrymandering would work. You can try and draw the district lines in a manner that would give your party an advantage. The reasons that this might be done is for incumbency protection, to sort of re-elect politicians, but it's most often used for partisan purposes, to ensure that your party is successful and the other party has less of a chance of winning. So just to recap, when we're talking about electoral districts, we can be referring to single-member districts, this is more common in majoritarian systems, or multi-member districts in proportional systems, and we typically call that district magnitude. The boundaries are important as well. They can be drawn by independent boundary commissions, like they are around the world in most countries, or like the United States, where they're drawn by elected politicians, and this can lead to partisan gerrymandering.